the Spanish power grid is so fragile that a single failure can leave us all in the dark. This is not an exaggeration. Red Eléctrica de España already warned in their 2024 reports that closing traditional power plants was increasing the risk of operational incidents. This massive blackout wasn't a coincidence or bad luck. It was the direct result of a system weakened by energy policies that prioritized being politically correct over the security of our energy supply. I'm going to show you how an electrical grid really works and why renewables without proper backup are leading us to disaster. The collapse no one saw coming. Imagine it's the middle of the day and suddenly everything goes dark. That's exactly what happened on April 28th in Spain and Portugal. More than 45 million people were left without power for 12 whole hours. Subways stopped running, trains were stuck, and thousands of people were trapped in elevators. At first they said it was a technical issue, but something much bigger caused this blackout. Red Eléctrica de España, which manages Spain's power grid, had already warned about the risks of closing down traditional power plants back in 2024. In their own documents, they admitted that this could lead to problems that would affect the power supply. That warning became a reality months later when the whole system crashed. To understand what happened, think about a bathtub filling up with water. The faucet pouring water is like the electricity production, and the drain is like the consumption. When both are balanced, the water level stays the same. In the electrical grid, that balance is measured in frequency, 50 Hz in Europe. But on that day, the consumption suddenly dropped from 25,184 MW to just over 12,000 MW. It was like suddenly opening the drain too much while the faucet was still pouring the same amount of water. The system tried to compensate, but it couldn't. The frequency became unstable and everything collapsed. Experts call this a blackout, when the power stops flowing completely. This wasn't a small problem, it was a total system failure. The scary part is that it could have been avoided. The grid operator itself had pointed out the risk months earlier. Red Eléctrica's report clearly stated, closing conventional power plants reduces the electrical system's ability to remain stable and balanced, as well as its strength and inertia. These aren't just unimportant technical words. They mean that when plants like coal or combined cycle plants disappear, the grid loses its ability to react quickly to unexpected events. What happened shows just how fragile our electrical system has become. Renewable energies are key for the future, but they need backup. Plants like hydroelectric or gas plants can adjust their production quickly when there are sudden changes. But we've been closing down many of these plants without ensuring equally effective alternatives. The blackout wasn't a random accident. It was the result of specific decisions made in recent years. Every time a conventional plant is closed without a suitable replacement, the grid loses stability. The technical documents said it, the experts warned about it, but it happened anyway. Now the question is, what do we do to prevent this from happening again? Because what happened that day could happen again if we don't change how we manage energy. It's not about being against renewable energy. It's about understanding that they need a system that supports them when they fail. Electricity isn't something we can afford to lose for hours. Hospitals, elevators, traffic lights, everything depends on the grid working. The next time you hear that they are going to close a conventional power plant, think about this blackout. It wasn't the first, and it won't be the last if we continue down this path. The data is there. The warnings are there. We just need to start taking them seriously. The dangerous game of renewables without backup. Renewable energies are essential for the future of energy, but if we don't implement them correctly, they can cause serious problems. The case of Spain shows that the problem is not with renewables themselves, but with how we've added them to the power grid without the necessary backup. Conventional plants, like combined cycle or hydroelectric plants, have a key advantage. They can adjust their output in a matter of minutes. This is crucial when the demand for electricity changes suddenly, something that happens several times a day. For example, if many homes turn on their air conditioners at the same time, these plants can quickly increase their generation to compensate. But renewable energies don't work that way. A wind farm can't generate more energy if the wind isn't blowing, and solar panels stop producing when it's cloudy. Nuclear power plants provide stability, but they have another problem. They're slow to react. They can't increase or decrease their output quickly, which makes them not very useful for responding to sudden changes in demand. Renewables have a double challenge. They're unstable and they don't provide what's known as system inertia. Inertia in an electrical grid acts like a cushion that absorbs shocks. When there's an imbalance between the energy being generated and the energy being consumed, the large turbines in conventional plants keep spinning for a few seconds, giving the system time to correct the problem before it collapses. Renewables don't provide that inertia because they don't rely on rotating masses. Wind turbines and solar panels don't have that stabilizing effect. Every time a conventional power plant is closed, we not only lose generation capacity, but also that ability to cushion fluctuations. The result is a more fragile grid, where any minor fault can turn into a widespread blackout. During yesterday's blackout, this became clear. The system couldn't react in time because it had lost much of its rapid response capacity. Red Eléctrica de España had already warned about this. By closing conventional plants, the system becomes more vulnerable. It's like removing the bumpers from a car. A small bump can cause much greater damage. To make matters worse, current policies encourage the closure of gas and coal plants without ensuring equally effective alternatives. Some argue that batteries could be the solution, but today they don't have enough capacity to support the grid in the event of a massive outage. The reality is that we need a balance. Renewables to reduce emissions, but also backup plants that can act when the system requires it. What happened wasn't an isolated technical error, but the consequence of how we've designed our electrical system in recent years. When we prioritize only what seems politically correct, without thinking about the security of supply, we end up with blackouts that affect millions. The solution is not to abandon renewables, but to integrate them intelligently, maintaining what we already know works. Experts have been warning about this for years. Without backup plants, every time there's a peak in consumption or an unexpected drop in renewable generation, we'll be one step away from another massive blackout. It's not a matter of ideology, it's pure engineering. A stable electrical system needs diversity. Renewables, yes, but also sources that can be activated when others fail. The blackout was a wake-up call. Now the question is whether we're going to listen or if we're going to wait for it to happen again. Because without changes, it will happen again. And next time, it could be in the middle of winter, when the lack of electricity is not only annoying, but potentially deadly. Energy is too important to play Russian roulette with. We need a system that works, not just on paper, but in reality. Cyberattacks, sabotage, and hybrid warfare. Cutting a single undersea cable or a cyber attack could leave us without electricity in the blink of an eye. The Spanish power grid is targeted by thousands of cyber attacks every week. Most are blocked, but the threat is real. In 2019, Russia showed what it could do. It plunged Ukraine into darkness with a simple cyber attack. They shut down entire substations for hours. If it happened there, it could happen here. Recently, Russian ships have been spotted near undersea cables in the Atlantic. They're not there by chance. In 2023, the Baltic Connector pipeline linking Finland and Estonia was sabotaged. A Chinese vessel damaged it by dragging its anchor. There's a clear pattern behind these incidents. Energy infrastructure is a prime target in modern hybrid warfare. Pro-Kremlin channels are trying to recruit Europeans to carry out acts of sabotage. They're offering cryptocurrency payments to spy on military bases or attack critical infrastructure. This isn't science fiction. It's happening right now. Taiwan suffered several attacks on its undersea cables in 2024, with clear signs of Chinese involvement. These attacks are not random. They are part of well-planned strategies. The problem is that our power grid is vulnerable for two reasons. First, technically, we rely on networks and computer systems that could be hacked. Second, politically, we are dismantling plants that could provide us with energy security when these types of attacks occur. More robust and decentralized networks would be harder to take down. When Russia attacked the Ukrainian power grid in 2015, it used a virus called Black Energy. Hackers remotely opened electrical switches and erased critical data to delay recovery. More than 200,000 people were left without power for 6 hours. It was the first confirmed case of a cyber attack causing a massive blackout. Since then, the techniques have evolved. NATO has already reacted. They have deployed underwater drones and surveillance ships in the Baltic Sea. It's called Operation Baltic Sentry, designed to protect critical infrastructure. But in Spain, meanwhile, we continue to shut down plants that could help us in an emergency. It's a dangerous contradiction. Undersea cables are especially vulnerable. Spain is a key hub for transatlantic telecommunications. If someone were to cut these cables, it wouldn't just affect electricity, but also the internet, banking systems, and military communications. Suspicious ships lurking near this infrastructure should be a wake-up call. The question is not if we could suffer an attack, but when. Experts have been warning about this for years. Security measures exist, but none are foolproof. In these situations, what helps most is having redundant systems and backup generation capacity. Exactly what we are getting rid of. Wars are no longer fought only with soldiers and tanks. Today, power grids, gas pipelines, and communication cables are under attack. Our mistake would be to think that this can't happen to us. The data shows otherwise. Every closure of a conventional power plant is not just an energy decision. It's also a reduction in our ability to withstand these attacks. What happened in Ukraine, Finland, and Taiwan are warnings we cannot ignore. A blackout caused by an attack would be much more serious than yesterday's. It could last for days or weeks, with unpredictable consequences. The solution is not to go back to the past, but to maintain what works while we build more resilient systems. For now, we're headed in the opposite direction. What the government doesn't want you to know. When a massive blackout happens, there are always two sides to the story. The official one says it was a one-time failure, something unpredictable. But the internal documents from Red Electrica tell the real story. In their 2024 accounts, they admit something serious. The system is losing strength and responsiveness. It's not an opinion, it's their own technical reports. Here's what they don't want you to know. Red Electrica acknowledges that closing conventional power plants reduces the electrical system's ability to stay stable and balanced, as well as its overall strength. These are not just fancy words. They mean that every time they close a coal or gas plant, the system gets weaker. The worst part is, they knew it. It was written in their reports months before the blackout. It wasn't an accident. It was the result of deliberate decisions. The official explanations talk about a technical failure, but they leave out the main thing. The grid operator itself warned that closing conventional plants would increase the risk of incidents that could affect the power supply. When what they told you could happen actually happens, it's not bad luck, it's negligence. Closing these plants was not a technical decision, but a political one. To meet short-term goals, they sacrificed the security of the system. Compare this to Sweden. There, they have a public manual for citizens on how to prepare for prolonged blackouts. They explain what to do if the power goes out for days. Why don't we have something similar here? Perhaps because admitting that blackouts can be frequent doesn't fit the image they want to project. They prefer to act when it's already too late. The April blackout was just the beginning. The real problem is not what happened, but that it can happen again. And when it happens, they will continue with the same speech. They will say it was something exceptional, that no one could have foreseen it. But it's a lie. The documents show that they knew this would happen. They call them operational risks due to the closure of conventional plants. That is the inconvenient truth. Red Electrica's accounts are clear. The closure of conventional power plants, derived from regulatory requirements, results in a reduction in the capacity for firmness and balancing of the electrical system, as well as its strength and inertia. This reduction in capacity can increase the likelihood of operational incidents. There is no possible interpretation. They wrote it themselves. Now comes the key question. Who will take responsibility? Because when the warnings are in official documents and you ignore them, it is no longer a mistake. It is irresponsible. This blackout affected millions of people. The metro stopped, hospitals ran on generators, the streets were filled with chaos. All because they decided to sacrifice the stability of the system for political objectives. The most worrying thing is that this is not over. Every time another conventional plant is closed without a suitable replacement, the risk increases. This is not about being against renewables. It's about understanding that they need backup. An electrical system is not an ideological experiment. It is something that lives depend on every day. When we vote next, let's remember this. Because the lights in our homes, the traffic lights on the streets, the equipment in hospitals, depend on decisions that are made far from the headlines. Decisions that, as we have seen, can have very real consequences. The question now is, are we going to demand accountability, or will we continue to believe the excuses? The documents are there. The truth is too. All that's missing is someone to say it out loud. Yesterday's blackout was just the first sign. If we don't make changes, it will happen again. We have two clear paths. We can continue to ignore the technical warnings or demand a truly secure electrical system. Red Electrica's documents made it clear since 2024. We need fast response power plants that can react to emergencies and enough inertia to keep the grid stable. Every time they close a conventional plant without a suitable replacement, the risk increases. You just have to go to the newspaper archives, where they say that what happened would never happen. Are they really telling us the truth? Because this is not a theoretical discussion. The decisions made now will determine whether we avoid new massive blackouts. The experts have already given the solution. All that is lacking is the political will to apply it.